Everybody, welcome back to DisInfo Watch. We have the luxury and the pleasure of having one of the inspirations for the actual podcast itself, Nick Muller, so a colleague of ours from Berlin, an investigative journalist and a regular contributor to the Diplomat. But also in maybe his other life, he basically spends all his time trying to make sense of the chaos in our information systems by fact-checking and verifying and trying to unpack all the chaos that's happening on our social media feeds, as well as our actual news files that are coming out to us in all these different types of reports. So, Nick, thank you so much for being back on the show with us. And we'd really like to dig into a day in your life of how do you make sense of this chaos. And then maybe we could start a little bit with just where is your brain and where is maybe your head and your heart about the state of play right now with regard to information online in our daily feeds? What does it really look like to you?
Yeah, thanks for having me again, Doug. I think the last few weeks have been extremely overwhelming for people because when you have this barrage of news, especially during the war between Iran and Israel, it was just one after another, and a lot of time. I mean, at least in this time zone, I was waking up to things which happened late in the U.S., which were decisions made by the U.S. administration. So then you are, then you have like just it seemed like new stuff every day, and so it's quite overwhelming even for me. Um, and yeah, there were a lot of things which were not really verifiable, obviously, um, related to like the bombings of these different nuclear sites and all these things, and so then you sort of have to wait for forensic kind of investigations to come out, which have happened from different uh, big media organizations and fact-checking organizations. So just really a barrage of stuff, and then obviously not only related to war, but also just all these different announcements on the U.S. side, whether it's like tariffs or some new ICE policy or something like that. It's just I think it's an extremely overwhelming time, and yeah, I even feel it myself right now.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't a single day, I think, that go to sleep or wake up where there isn't some sense of immediate tension that's injected into us just by turning on our phones. It's a bad habit to end the day or start the day by looking at your device, but now it feels like you have to understand what the hell is really going on in the world because, from one second to the next, you really don't really understand what like the ground beneath your feet. What are you really standing on? I think yesterday I went to sleep thinking that maybe the House is going to water down what the Senate was saying about this bullshit bill, right? I'm not even going to call it what they want to call it, but about that the Senate breaks the tie with J.D. Vance, and then here you go with this thing, and it's going to go back to the House, and now they're going to kind of like turn it into something, and they already passed it. So
Yeah, and I
where was the
think I think
resistance?
this was actually like a really ideal moment for the administration to do this because they know that how much information is out there, and so actually a lot of things in the bill and just the bill itself was just, I mean, it was parsed through by many media organizations, but like the attention is in so many different places right now for the public that people are worn down. It's also like Fourth of July weekend, so
Yeah.
it's actually a perfect way to have people distracted and just it's a complicated bill with many different facets, but the implications of it are absolutely huge on so many different fronts, and so really relying on people just not paying attention.
Yeah, and I think I think the phrase they're using is muzzle velocity in terms of the way these things are hitting us, and they don't even really hide it. Steve Bannon has said that this is the open strategy of how they're going to ensure they get what they want. But like that's about like there's always going to be spin. There's always going to be political machines that are going to try to turn something into their own advantage, or they're going to present information in ways and numbers in ways that will benefit their ideology or their agendas. But we're in a very, very different place right now with information online. And I don't know if we can like shift maybe over towards like UGC, like user generated content, and how that is really kind of exploding in ways that are just kind of insane and are
Mm.
uncontrollable. And there we can maybe unpack a couple of examples, but maybe before we dive into the specifics of it, maybe you could give us a little bit of an insider's look of what is it like at 8 in the morning when you pour your coffee and you have to go on and do some fact checking. Like, what does that really look like for you?
Yeah, it's been, yeah, as I said, it's been really crazy this last weeks compared to probably since I think I can only probably compare it to the start of like after October 7th. The intensity of um just really really wild information just spreading everywhere. There are two things which are happening. It's not just like viral images which are being spread everywhere, which are just recycled from like every other past war, like in whether it's in Syria or in something in Lebanon or something in Iraq from 2003. Those things always pop up at the beginning of any new sort of cycle of conflict or violence or war. But the other thing is that I see also is just like all these crazy claims. So like um, it's not just the actual content itself, but what people are saying some official said. And that's fairly easy to fact check because most statements you can find like either online at some like at their foreign ministry website or whatever. Um, but yeah, just like the supreme leader of Iran said this, or Trump said this, or and so there are just all kinds of wild things which just go really everywhere. And then yeah, as always, once they're out of the box, they're very hard to contain, but easier to deal with than these like either recycled images or AI generated images.
I mean, like, we've shared a lot of different resources in all of our conversations, and but it would be cool if you could maybe share with our listeners and viewers a little bit about what the standards of fact checking are like right now. And I know you've referenced something called data journalism, and there's like toolkits and different types of things. So if you could help our users understand a little bit what it's like, what are the tools and the resources that you, or the standards in particular, before you even get to the tools, how do you really do this appropriately in terms of checking and verifying?
You mean in terms of the steps
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
or
like the maybe the
yeah.
standards of what the data journalism toolkit is really kind of just putting forward, um, and then from there, like what tools do you use?
I mean it's obviously going to be a little bit different for someone who is doing like investigative work, really parsing through like huge amounts of material. You have like people like that who work for Bellingcat who are really digging into things for that takes like weeks and months. So they're using like a whole variety of tools. I think you can, yeah, I sent you the site. You can look on Bellingcat's website, which is going through all these different tools that they use. But for me, when I'm doing things generally, like first I'm starting off with just okay, what is the claim saying, and like is it possibly true? If it is, then I need to do like just a quick Google search, and then I use also like for my work I use advanced Google search a lot. But yeah, I mean if you want to look at an image really quickly, I think like the number one tool that every fact checker is going to be using is definitely like reverse image search. So you're just doing a screenshot of the photo, uh, and then running it through yeah, you can run it through Google Lens, and then you can also compare those results to like other search engines. Like I mean generally I wouldn't use Yandex for like verifying information, but actually they have an incredible database of like of images in terms of like sometimes things which you don't even see necessarily on other search engines. I'm not really sure why, but yeah, I always just sort of cross-reference those things. And
Could you
then,
let everybody know what Yandex is if they're not familiar with it?
yeah, so it's the Russian, it's a sort of the Russian Google. So they they experiment. They have like very good people, obviously still working for them, like super talented people. Whether you want to debate the way that they're using this information is another thing, but they have developed like super high level capabilities in terms of like facial recognition, and so this is obviously super useful when you're doing like a reverse image search. So yeah, you wanna if you're questioning like, is this photo possibly real or fake, you at least wanna do a quick Google like of just what is this claim, and like, has it shown up anywhere? Is it anywhere in any sort of primary source? So like on any sort of government website, just something firsthand, and then yeah, you want to then proceed with the reverse image search. And if you don't find anything in either one of those things, I would really probably not want to proceed after that in terms of sharing something, unless you have like some other tools to really spend a lot of time going through these things, because on average it takes me 20 to 30 minutes to go through a video, but that's after having done like several thousand videos. Yeah, I mean the other useful thing that you can do is you can go to Poynter's website. So Poynter is like a big media literacy organization, and they actually, so they have like a whole collection of global fact checking organizations around the world, and so you can go to some of them if you want, and then also like just type in the claim and see what shows up. So that's what I also do when I'm going through a claim. Those are the sort of three preliminary things. So just a quick Google search, reverse image search, and then going through different reputable fact checking organizations sites. And if nothing shows up, then there's a very high possibility that the claim is just not true at all. Unless it's like something which is breaking, which has just not been dealt with yet, but it would show up in a couple of days, like on any fact checking website, like, or on BBC Verify or on AFP or something like that. So
Yeah, so I was thinking like that's if there's like a particular claim that's being made, but when it's say it's an image or it's a video, and it's showing up on a social media feed. I've taken some pictures or some screenshots from a video, try to take a freeze frame out of a video clip or something, and then put it into like TinEye, and kind of do this reverse search. And a lot of times it'll pop up with a lot of hits, as in that image has been shared or posted dramatically, almost sort of
right.
similar to where there may be a photo by a journalist that goes out on the wire, and then it gets sent out to all the different publications. So you'll find that it exists in many, many places. And you maybe try to dive back, find the highest resolution version of it to say maybe this was the origin, the point of origin. But when it's all out there like that, like it kind of went viral already, or many, many different entities have posted it. What's the kind of the next step of clarifying that whether this picture's been manipulated, or it's been created by AI, or there's some, it does, just because it's out there in a lot of places doesn't mean it's legit. So what else could an individual do if they kind of take some of these early steps, and then they find it in lots of places, and then they think, oh, that's good, I can share it now?
Well, I would at least, from what I have to do in terms of reputable sourcing, I need to have at least two, but better three reputable sources which have said that this image is valid. But yeah, so when you put a photo into reverse image search, a lot of times it does show like all these different social media posts. But if I literally go through, I don't know, 50 of these photos, and there's literally nothing which is either reported by an actual journalist, or by a media organization, I definitely would not. I definitely would not share that. I don't think it has to be more complicated than that, actually, because yeah, there are a lot of things which I see circulated, and even on my social feeds, like by people, and they're not fact checked at all. People are just widely sharing them, and
In this data journalism toolkit, or ethics of like how you're going about this, like you've been talking a lot about like the corroborate like section of this like kind of standard of like trying to verify whether the source of this information maybe past
Yeah.
the authorship. And inside here, it was really interesting to see that I mean, not everybody knows this, but every photograph has information inside it. It's like
Right.
metadata or EXIF data, and this stuff is kind of, almost like, I guess, the cookies of the photo, right? And it's like it follows it wherever it goes. You can figure out like the type of camera that was used, the location, all sorts of information. But it was really interesting to find out that these major social media platforms scrub this metadata or this EXIF data off of the files once it goes out onto their channels. So why do they do that? Why do they scrub all that information out of the image?
I actually was not aware that that was happening, but I still think that I mean, with metadata, if you're dealing with an image which is posted somewhere off of a social media site, you can find the metadata, but there are still ways to like manipulate metadata or just erase it now. So it does it like it used to be a reputable way of checking something, but I think now people who are spreading these things, they also know that
Yeah.
this is like a way around it. So I think checking metadata is it like if you're checking an image just by itself and not a screenshot, then it's still possible to do. But yeah, if you're taking a screenshot from something which is longer or from a video, then it's not going to be the only way to verify something anymore. Unfortunately.
Wonderful. That's fantastic to know. With
But there are
regard
other
to
ways. I mean, with if you're talking about AI related stuff, yeah, you need to just look at the photo itself. Like, does it look like a real image? Uh, does it look too does it look too perfect? And then, I mean, still, what is bad in a lot of these images which are AI generated is just that you see like hands with several fingers, or you see things which are sticking out of people's bodies which shouldn't be there. um, but yeah, this sometimes takes a long time. But I think that most AI images still are not that good, and so you can see like the colors are weird, or just everything is aligned too perfectly. But yeah, we'll see how it is in a couple of years, because the speed in which this has happened is just something unprecedented. So
Yeah, I think the real scary thing is that it's not just this like kind of AI slop that they're talking about, where they just like, I don't know, just kind of turn all sorts of weird things into animated realities, and you got giant tigers walking around as humans, and it's like it's bizarre, and it's obviously not real. It's the scariest stuff is like when the stuff really does look real, or maybe you can spot a deep fake where they obviously put someone else's face on someone's body or something, and it's a little still not very clean. But when they're really kind of pushing out information and it's influencing public opinion on what a government should decide to do with their military, or like, I think that a good example of like, it's still, when you really finally look at it, it looks completely ridiculous. These photos that they came out with these downed Israeli F-35 planes in Iran, that you could fit all of the people in the picture into the cockpit of that plane because of the size of the plane in the picture, so when you really look at it, it looks completely ridiculous. But at first glance, it looks legit. It looks like, holy shit, that's a breaking news story that this plane was downed, and then it gets shared millions and millions of times within minutes. So
mhm.
that's going to end up pushing people to believe certain things. And when we now have leaders that are, passing out information before we even have information, that, there's no forensics to clarify. An example, there's no forensics to clarify whether or not the bunker buster bombs destroyed Iran's
Right.
nuclear facilities in Fordo, but it's been totally obliterated. And how dare you say it hasn't been? Because we said it was. So therefore, you're fake news and you can't be trusted. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, no one has any information yet. No one has access to the space. So how would you know it's obliterated? So it's like,
Yeah.
it's sort of like when you have these, I feel like they're bad faith actors, like deliberately pushing narratives that benefit their side of a situation, we're all really vulnerable. But we're all kind of participating in this to some degree on our social media feeds. So it feels like there's two different games being played at the same time, where there's like the actual information that's out there that's real news, and then there's this other layer of everything that's happening on social media platforms that actually has more influence. It's reaching many, many more people than the news report, because people aren't even looking at the news reports anymore. So, what I think, you know, we were talking about this like months ago when it started being stated that Facebook was not going to use independent third-party fact-checking anymore. What are the big platforms doing about this obvious issue of really misleading images and videos and posts? What are they actually doing right now to combat it, or what are they saying they're doing to combat it?
There are some fact checks or at least warnings on different, at least on Instagram, as far as I know, that I've seen still, which are still there. I mean, I don't know what Facebook's current policy is, but there are some warnings still which are there. Um, but yeah, just it's the I don't know, like even if you had thousands of people who were dedicated to just dealing with that stuff, just the volume of it is so difficult. So I think it's still up to the person who is viewing this information to take at least a couple of seconds to try and see like is this possibly viable. But yeah, I mean, it's clear that most of the social media platforms, especially Meta, have given up on like on really investing big resources into that. But from what you were talking about before, I think one of the main problems, which has just made this especially difficult with in regards to the U.S., Israel, and Iran, is that you can't really trust. I mean, you cannot. It's so difficult to trust like what the Israeli government is saying, what the Iranian government is saying, and what the U.S. government is saying now. So then, and they're all putting out information very quickly, which is just
Yeah, you can't trust any of it. So
completely unsubstantiated, and so that's what makes this even more difficult, because I think before at least I could generally rely on like on the sources coming out of the U.S. government on most things. At least you could, not always, but yeah, it's very hard because the changes that now the U.S. I mean the U.S. government is really just throwing out all these things there very quickly and saying like we've destroyed everything, we've done this and that, and that wasn't really happening in the past administration like it is now. So yeah, once that stuff is out there, then it's difficult to put back in the box.
yeah, that's the thing that I think is the scariest part about it. I mean, you referenced it earlier about how at the beginning of a conflict there's always this almost a recycling of old war footage in certain ways. And so at the beginning of Israel's attack on Iran, there were all these posts on. I'm not on these platforms anymore, so I'm just like finding this resource after the fact. But like on X, there were posts about Israel bombing Iran without mercy, right? And then it's revealed that all the footage that's in this clip is actually the U.S. shock and awe campaign over Baghdad in 2003. So it's literally 2 decades ago, and it's not even hidden. It's not even like, oh, they took a clip of it and then mixed it with some other stuff. They just take the original clip and stick it out there as something else, and it gets like 3 million views within a heartbeat on X, and then it's already too late. There's no way, and then that gets chopped up and turned into other things. And now you're like, what are you going to do? How do you, as you said, how do you put that back in the box when now everyone believes that that's the case?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the photos which I saw um, of particular bombings which they were saying were taking place in Iran. Yeah, they were either from Syria back in late last year, or from 2003 or anywhere between 2003 and now, because the US has been at war with on several fronts. And so yeah, there are so many different I think the hard thing for people to verify is because most of these bombings, I mean, they happen at night. Militaries bomb places at night when they're the most vulnerable, and so then you just have like mushroom clouds, or you have
Yeah.
explosions, and then that's very easy to share, compared to, when you have something during the day. It's way easier. You have a million different details that you can check.
Yeah, but like the Tigris and the Euphrates do not flow through Tehran. So, it's kind of hard to hide a river, or they don't even care. They just post the video anyway. It's really shocking to me to see that, like that's happening, that they're not, it's so blatant, and yet it'll still be shared like crazy, so blindly. It's kind of nuts.
The intensity has gone down a little bit, but I still do see, like, I don't know, I've seen a couple of things like today saying like the airport in Tel Aviv has been bombed, and then you have like all of these different airplanes which are destroyed, but all of it is AI generated, so it's not even an attempt to make it look real. It's I think it's also an attempt to just give people some satisfaction and looking at these images for whatever reason, and that happens on like both sides, I think, or on many sides. Uh, just like I think people want to see like destruction for some reason, or they also get used to seeing this stuff, and then so they want to see like, okay, what's gonna happen next? Like, okay, this was bombed, this was bombed, this was bombed, and then yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, it's war porn basically. That's what it is.
So Nick, could you help? This sounds very like labor intensive. The entire idea of having to check everything you start seeing in your social media feed or on reports, and it's coming at such a crazy speed and pace that it's like kind of impossible to keep up with it, especially when you have your regular life to deal with and your own problems. So, what are some sources that you think regular people could look to who are doing this kind of labor intensive work that you do and then other news desks are doing? Where can people look to and trust the information that they are fact checking and verifying?
I still think, yeah, there's still a lot. I mean, there are fact-checking organizations around the world, and who are part of the global fact-checking network. Yeah, there's also almost every big media organization still has one as well. I mean, I'm often referencing like BBC Verify, AFP Fact Check, the New York Times has one, and they all deal with. They're all very good at dealing with like viral claims. So yeah, I would go there.
I went to the ARD Fact Finder recently in Germany, and they had a piece about how there was an apartment building in Tel Aviv getting bombed by Iran. And then it was an AI generated image of this apartment building coming down almost like the towers, right, on 9/11. And then in this video, they cut to people dancing in the streets in Tehran celebrating death to Israel. And then in this report that they fact checked and did reverse image search on all this stuff, they found that celebration in the streets was actually a Nowruz celebration of people celebrating the New Year in Iran. And had nothing, it was like, you're just like stitching shit together that doesn't have any connection whatsoever. So the first thing was AI generated, and the second thing was out of context, and it makes it look like everyone in Iran wants to kill all the people, and that all the regular citizens are following the same attitude of their regime, which is death to Israel, death to America, which is not true. But you have to go to a fact finder website. You have to go to a service that's really doing this work, especially when this stuff's coming out so quickly. And for me, I recently was like trying to dig into some of these reports, specifically about what's going on at these distribution spots in Gaza, that this fake humanitarian foundation that is controlled by America and Israel, and they're controlling all the aid. And there's all these reports of people getting shot trying to get the food. And then you go online, you go on social media, and it's both sides. Some say, half of reports are saying all these people are getting killed, and the other half saying no one's getting killed. And you're like, well, what the fuck's really going on? And then I stick some of these images into like deepware these video clips or these photos into deepware to see what's AI generated or what's been manipulated somehow. And a lot of them come back saying, yeah, this was manipulated. This is not real. This is not true. And other ones that look identical to them, they come back and say, there's no manipulation here. So I think that it can also still be really confusing. It's almost like the same image, right? It almost is like, but is it that that these services or these AI tools that we could use, are they also in some respects seeking out some particular type of information in the file, and that's where they'll come back with their, their verdict that this was or was not manipulated versus no, there's, for instance, no, there's no deep fake technology used on this presenter's face. Therefore, this file is fine, but it's not really telling us about the footage behind the presenter's face. You know what I mean? Like there feels like you can't necessarily know exactly how you're judging this file to be whether it was manipulated, whether it's true, or it's verified.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not using AI. I'm not using AI sites to verify information, because I just think that they give like, I mean, I've tested it, but they give like wildly different results. But there are also these sites which are looking at like how big is the possibility of this image being AI generated. And yeah, like you also get like really different results. So I would say for now, yeah, I sort of, I check them and sometimes they're okay, but in general, like I still think that they're not very good yet in terms of like a reliable way of checking something. But yeah, that could change in a year or two. But yeah,
Yeah,
they're just,
yeah.
I think that like, I mean, I also, this was more with text than images, but I think it was it was either on the Times or on the Post yesterday. They ran like the same claim through several different like AI search engines, like through ChatGPT, through Perplexity, through Grok, through the other ones, and they had like completely different. They were spitting out completely different things.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That Grok one on X said that the footage of Israel bombing Iran without mercy was fact checked that the sources were CNN, BBC, and The Guardian, clarifying that, and there's no evidence or there's nothing leaning us to believe that this was from another place but this was the 2003 footage. So
Yeah.
this Grok was confused with the fact that CNN, BBC, and The Guardian did actually report on the Baghdad bombing in 2003, the shock and awe campaign. So the AI bot got confused thinking that this was factual, but it was then verifying that there's absolutely no chance that this is not from 2025 Israel and Iran. So it's like you really cannot trust this shit. Like, but we
I
are.
mean, I think you can take a look. So, for example, if you look at Perplexity AI, they at least give you the sources from where. So, if you're putting a claim in, or if you're describing a photo to try and find this photo, you can at least see where like the sources they generate are coming from. So, they sometimes come up with like the correct reliable sources, but sometimes they're spitting out things from Wikipedia or from like weird websites. So yeah, I mean, if you just have a few seconds, I guess you can use something like that, but you should definitely not necessarily rely on the results without actually checking then what sources they're spitting out to you. But yeah, I mean, Google has one as well, which is I think getting better, but yeah, I think there's obviously no transparency in terms of how these AI models are being built, and I'm not sure we're gonna ever know unless maybe there are like whistleblowers who are talking about these things in a few years. But yeah, I think people are gonna more and more heavily rely on these AI search engines, like which is really gonna take over Google. So you're just gonna type in something to ChatGPT or Perplexity AI or one of these other ones, like, and then if you're really taking what they're saying like just at face value, then it's risky, I would say.
And then we're gonna end up in Mountain Head, like where four or five people are making all the decisions about what information we receive, and then deal with the fallout of people acting on chaos. I mean, I don't know. It scares the shit out of me to think that where this is trending in a couple of years, if we're here as it is now, and there's no transparency, as you're saying, and then there's this kind of immediate real world impact of any type of, even a textual lie has already been turning into straight up mob violence in multiple places last year in Southampton in the UK, and then again this year in Northern Ireland, with all these people getting attacked, all off of false reports and false statements by people who are sensationalizing things. But now you're talking about governments acting upon information or intelligence that they're, and then the public opinion of it is also really scary. So I don't know. One of the things that I thought was like really kind of crazy was that there's this guy Hani Farid who started this Get Real Labs. He's a professor at Berkeley, and when in the end of a longer interview, someone said to him, "Is like, well, what should people do?" And he's like, "Don't go on social media for your news,
Yeah.
and don't share that shit." And it's like, okay, yeah, but that's actually not going to happen. That's not the reality we live in now. Everybody is going to social media for their news. Nobody is, you have a primary in New York City recently that basically was completely influenced by TikTok videos. That, like you have an outcome that no one expected. And it's all based off of where people are getting their information from. So if you throw all your money in a campaign for, say, towards TV buys, you're not going to get any traction with real voters. Nobody's watching the news. Nobody's going to the network televisions. No one's reading the blogs. No one's watching the pundits anymore. They're just going to social media. So what are we really supposed to do here?
But I mean, with Dani's campaign, I mean, I haven't checked all the different claims around like things that he was posting, but I think that what was kind of different, as far as I know, is that he was not basing his whole campaign. Obviously, it was a big amount of stuff on social media, but it wasn't based on just fabricated
Oh no, I'm not
things.
suggesting it was. I'm saying more that like this is where people are looking for who
Yeah,
they're going to
yeah,
vote for. This is where people are looking for updates on the reality of what's going on in the world, and that changes the way they behave or
yeah.
how they buy, what they're purchasing. They vote with their wallet or they vote, with their actual what their politics are all influenced by this. So if the advice from everybody who is ringing the alarm bell is that this is a danger and these are the things we have to be worried about, but then they basically just say just turn it off or don't go on, like that's not realistic. That's not actually the realistic way of the way the world is working now. So what are we really supposed to do? And to be very clear, I am looking to you for a really serious answer to save us, Nick. So
Mhm.
like, you have to help us
Well,
here.
yeah, I mean, I mean, you can go to different pages on if you really feel like consuming your information through this way, like uh, you can go to certain pages on Instagram which are run by media organizations who are generating real information on those platforms. And if you want to share those things, then share them from those accounts. Um, I mean, these media organizations do get things wrong, and they generally also fix them.
Yeah, they file
But
corrections all
yeah,
the time. Like,
if you really feel the need to consume your information solely that way, then that is a decent solution. I mean, it's not something that I would advocate for only uh, in terms of consumption, but yeah, there are. I mean, when I share something on Instagram, for example, I'm not sharing. For one, I'm not sharing my opinion, but I'm also really looking at the source of what I'm sharing before um, because yeah, it can influence people look at me as a journalist. And so then if they see that I'm sharing something, then I think they're also sort of expecting that
Yeah.
it's more than likely reliable. So yeah, it depends on the way that you use it. But yeah, I mean, as far as I saw with Mamdani's, like the different comments, was that he was actually running a fairly positive
Yeah.
campaign using TikTok, and also sort of it was based in reality. It wasn't based on it wasn't based on the way that, for example, the Trump organization ran their
No.
campaign. So
Yeah. No.
if
No.
you look
Like.
at those two things side by side, it's quite a contrast. So yeah, I mean, if we want to go back to using these tools again, like, I mean, there was a time just a couple of years ago where media organizations were really investing in this, and like the Washington Post had like they were trying things on TikTok and stuff like that. And so if TikTok still exists in the US, it can be a force for good, but you need to pause for at least a couple of seconds and then and think about it.
Well, I think that's probably the best advice to end on. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, and to help us understand a little bit what it looks like on the other side of these screens and how you try to verify and dig into all this work. And thank you for all the work you do to clear the air and make sure that people are getting real information. So we appreciate you always coming out and working with us and being part of the show. And thanks so much for everything you do.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. So everybody back home, thank you for joining us. Again, this is a DisInfo Watch production of Refocus Media Labs. And this is, you have an opportunity to be part of our community and support us and our independent journalism. You can do so by joining us on Patreon, or making a straight donation to our website, sharing our content that we do spend a lot of time engaging with in advance to ensure that we are bringing you real, credible information. So please join us on our community online, and we will see you next week. Thanks.